Welcome to Amazing Dinosaurs. I'm Dave, and this is a collection of Jurassic World's most uncommon dinosaur figures. I bet there's quite a few figures in here that you haven't seen much of before. The first unusual species is this Eocarcharia figure from the new Dino Trackers series. It's got a fantastic feathering texture over its whole body and a single lever action on its back for the chomping and roaring. Next up is the mighty Spinosaurus figure. This has the green and brown coloring, and you can use the tail to control the head and open and close the jaw. Here is the Irritator dinosaur, and I think it's from the Dino Trackers series. This figure has some really cool coloring, and that same action button on its back for the chomping and roaring. Next up is this huge Quetzalcoatlus figure. If you're a big fan of the movies, you might remember this species in the Jurassic World Dominion movie. And it's got one button on its back for flapping its wings, and another button for moving its neck up and down and opening and closing its jaws. Right over here, I've got the Spinosaurus figure. This dinosaur walks on all four legs, and you can use the tail to move the head around and open and close the jaw. Next is a little bit of an older figure. This is a Concavinator figure. It's got this huge hump on its back that's red and purple, and its entire face is purple. And there's an action button on its back for a chomping action, and you can press on its spike to swing its tail back and forth. This aquatic dinosaur is called the Elasmosaurus. It's got a soft blue body, which I bet camouflages really well in the water, and it has two action buttons on its back. One swings its neck side to side, and the other moves its neck up and down. Here is the Proceratosaurus figure. This is the basic edition, so you can move its tail, its legs, and its arm, but sadly there is no action button. Still has some pretty cool coloring though. Next up is the Suchomimus figure. This version is in the yellow and brown, and it has two buttons on its back, one for chomping its jaw, and the other for swinging its tail. And I've actually got the other Suchomimus figure in here. This one is in the blue and yellow coloring. And this figure actually only has one action button, and that is for the chomping action. Check out this crazy looking figure. This is a Diabloceratops from the new Dino Trackers series. It's got the all red body, some gigantic horns on its head. It's got some sound effects, and the lever on its back for the action. Here's a slightly smaller dinosaur, but still pretty scary looking. This is the Majingasaurus dinosaur with the green, yellow, and blue coloring. And while you have to open and close its mouth manually on this figure, you can still use the tail to control the neck and the head. This next figure is from the new Dino Trackers series. This is the Orcaraptor figure. It has some feather texturing on part of its body. It also has these massive claws on its front arms. And just like all the other Dino Tracker figures, has this lever on its back for the roaring and the chomping action. Next up, I've got an Albertosaurus figure in the green and orange coloring. And with this figure, you can move the tail around to twist the neck back and forth and to chomp the jaw. This next uncommon species is a crazy looking carnivore figure. This is a Tarbosaurus. Check out that red underneath its chin and all these huge spikes running down its back. Plus, you can use the tail to twist the neck around and open and close the jaw. This next figure is also quite large. This species is called a Ceotsmicrorarum. It has the orange coloring on the sides and underbelly, and the dark blue on top, with all these rows of spikes on its head and on its back. And of course, its special feature is that you can use the tail to twist the neck around and open and close its jaw. Check out those really cool teeth. Next up is an herbivore figure. This is a Sinoceratops figure, and this version comes in the soft green coloring with some tan detailing and dark orange. And with this Sinoceratops figure, you can use the tail to move its head around in all sorts of directions. Check it out, it's another herbivore figure. This uncommon species is called an Ouranosaurus. It has a huge spine running along the top of its back and some really cool coloring. It's got the green on its body, bright yellow, orange, and even some blue on its face. And it has this action button on its side for moving its head and sound effects. Right over here, I've got the Ankylosaurus figure. Now this one is a bit older of a figure, but it's still pretty uncommon of a species. And it has two action buttons on its back. The first moves its head up and down, and the second button activates its tail for swinging back and forth. Alright, here's another carnivore. This is a Cryolophosaurus figure, and this version is the yellow one with the brown coloring and the huge crown on the top of its head. And with this figure, although you have to open and close its mouth manually, you can still use the tail to move its neck around. This next four-legged dinosaur is called a Nigersaurus. It's got the 2 tones of green on its body, and since it's from the Dino Tracker series, it has this special feature button on its back used for moving its head in all sorts of directions. This next uncommon species is called a Dryptosaurus figure, also from the new Dino Tracker series. It's got more dark coloring over most of its body, and it's got spikes all over on its head, on its back, and a bunch on its tail as well. And it's got the action button on its back for chomping and sound effects. This next figure is called the Gigant Spinosaurus dinosaur. It looks kind of like a Stegosaurus because it has those frills on its back, but it also has these huge spines coming out of its shoulder too. And it is actually spring-loaded so that when you move the head back and forth, it actually swings the tail back and forth too. Next up, I've got the Piatsnitskisaurus. It's got some pretty cool blue coloring over its whole body, and also some red, some orange, and some light green. Next up is the Nothosaurus dinosaur. It's a pretty weird-looking species. It's got some short legs and a really long neck and narrow snout. Here is the Shringosaurus dinosaur in the yellow and brown coloring. It walks on all 4 legs, and it has this massive pair of horns on the top of its head. Next up is the Austroraptor dinosaur figure. It comes in the tan and brown coloring and has a bit of dark orange along the top of its head, and it has a really long and narrow snout. Next up is a Herrerasaurus, which you might have heard before, but this is actually a pretty new figure and looks quite a bit different compared to the old version. Plus, it has an action button on its back for a chomping motion. This is the Geniodecticyrus figure. This version comes in the dark brown and yellow coloring, and it also has an action button on its back for opening and closing its jaw. Here is another aquatic dinosaur. This one is called the Tanystropheus figure. It's got some short little legs that you can adjust and a bright blue body, and when you move the tail up and down, it actually swings its neck way down to the bottom. Now here's a crazy looking dinosaur. This uncommon species is called a Scutosaurus. It's got a bright orange body and it walks on all 4s, and check out these huge horns underneath its chin. I've got a few more winged dinosaurs in here. This species is called Rhamphorhynchus. It's got some bright yellow-green wings and a bunch of crazy looking teeth in its mouth. This next dinosaur species is called the Zundaripterus. It's got bright yellow wings and a brown body, and you can actually see feather texturing all over its wings too. Plus, it's got a pretty unique looking face and jaw. Next up is a Dracorex figure. This one is colored bright green with some gray striping, and check out all those horns on the back of its head. Oh, you know what? I've got another winged dinosaur in here. This one is called the Tapehara. It's got a lot of orange and some green on its body, but the coolest part is this face. Check that out. Plus, there's a button on its back to flap its wings. The next dinosaur is an Elaphrosaurus figure. It comes in the blue coloring with some yellow and dark brown detailing. Check out those huge horns on the top of its head. Here is the extreme battle damage Quilmosaurus figure. It has the light green body with the dark green on top and the bright red chin. And check out that battle damage on the side that you can click on and off. Alright, I've got another aquatic dinosaur. This one is called the Plesiosaurus. It's got a dark green body with the white underneath, also to camouflage in the ocean, and a single action button on its back to move its fins. This next uncommon figure is the Masiakasaurus dinosaur. It has the dark red body with the yellow spotting all over, and spotting is pretty unusual for these dinosaur figures, and the single action button on its back for chomping its jaw. This is the Rugops primus figure. It has some feather texturing over its body and the soft green coloring on its body with the black on its tail and on its face. Here is the Miragaia figure. This figure looks quite a bit like a Stegosaurus, but this one also has the huge spikes coming out of its shoulders and a lot more spikes on its tail too. And here is a Pachycephalosaurus figure. I believe this one is from the Legacy collection, and this figure has a special feature that when you press down on its tail, it has the headbutting action. This little dinosaur here is called a Troodon. It has the pink underbelly and gray on the sides and the black spine and the black along the top of its head too. Next up is the Protoceratops figure. There's a few versions of this, and this one is in the bright green with yellow accenting. This figure I believe is called the Sauropelta. It has some huge spikes coming out of its shoulders and is actually spring-loaded so you can swing its shoulders back and forth with those huge spikes. Here's a crazy looking figure. This is actually a hybrid dinosaur from the first Jurassic World movie. This is a Triceratops and Stegosaurus hybrid. Check out that battle damage right on the side too. And it even has an action button. When you press down its tail, you get a stabbing action with its head. And last of all, I've got the Spinosaurus figure. This is a newer version that is in the brown coloring with the tan and black on its face, and it has a single action button for a stabbing action. Welcome back to the Amazing Dinosaurs channel. Today we are checking out my collection of the rarest Jurassic Park and Jurassic World figures. First, I just bought some Jurassic Park sets off of eBay. The first one is the Alan Grant with double-barreled Bola launcher from the Jurassic Park new Series 2. Let's check this out. So there's Dr. Alan Grant. We've got a variety of tools here as well as a little dinosaur. And way up at the top here, you can see that it's some type of claw contraption or something used for trapping dinosaurs, it looks like. Now, I'm not gonna open this up because this is a collectible and I wanna keep it in this condition since it's unopened right now. But I still have another figure from eBay that I just bought that we're gonna check out as well. This is the Compsognathus, or at least I think that's how you pronounce it, codenamed Lasher from Jurassic Park Chaos Effect series. And this dinosaur is super colorful. It's got some light blue-green over its body with the black, it's got some yellow, it's got some orange, it's got blue right on its nose. So this will be super cool to add to my collection too. And as you can see, it is a combination dinosaur of a Compsognathus, a Stegosaurus, and an African tree frog. That is pretty wild. As you'll notice with basically all of these figures are discontinued, so you won't be able to find them new anywhere. You might be able to find them on eBay or something like that. But this first one is a Jurassic Park Allosaurus. And this figure actually has multiple pieces of battle damage that you can completely take off. And this front battle damage actually has multiple layers. You can take off the ribs to see the stomach underneath, and then you can just cover it back up with the skin, just like that. You can also remove the thigh on this dinosaur, see the flesh underneath, as well as on the tail. You can rip off a piece of the tail and see the bone and flesh underneath too. Back here, we've got one of the original Tyrannosaurus Rexes from Jurassic Park. This figure has some pretty unique coloring over its body. It's got the clay red with the black spots and stripes. It's got the lighter underbelly. It originally had sound effects, and its whole body is a soft rubber, which is a common theme with the older figures. Right here, we've got a T-Rex from Jurassic Park: The Lost World. This is the Thrasher Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it also has a soft rubber body aside from the arms and the legs. And with this T-Rex, you can actually wiggle the tail to control the face and the neck, move it back and forth. All right, I know you've been keeping your eye on these huge T-Rexes on the side. This super colossal T-Rex is one of a kind, and that is because it is actually custom colored. It's got a light tan body all around. It's got some interesting shadowing and detail all over. It's also got some super dark red eyes and some interestingly colored teeth too. So those are darker teeth than what's normal. So while you may be able to get a super colossal T-Rex, you will not be able to buy one that is this color. Next up for the one-of-a-kind super colossal dinosaurs is this T-Rex. And this has some of the craziest custom coloring out of any figures that I've seen. It looks like a fire T-Rex. Got the bright red over its belly and sides. It's got the glowing orange right next to the black, and then the black top. This is a super cool one-of-a-kind T-Rex. And for our final one-of-a-kind, custom-colored, super colossal dinosaurs is this Velociraptor. This, I think, has some of the best custom coloring out of any figure that I have. It is so detailed and so well done. It's got the black body with these brown stripes, and there's even these little gold specks along its brown stripes as well. My favorite part though are the eyes. These are incredibly detailed. It's like a gold eye, but then it's got red towards the center and then the black pupil. You will not be able to find another super colossal velociraptor with this coloring anywhere. Here we've got a Jurassic Park Stegosaurus with battle damage right on the shoulder. This figure has a somewhat soft rubber body. The tail is especially rubbery, so you can swing that back and forth with those spikes at the end. And it has a very natural green and brown and light tan coloring all over its body, so it really blends into the jungle. This giant T-Rex, I believe, is the Jurassic Park Lost World Bull Tyrannosaurus Rex. This T-Rex has some pretty unique coloring with this green-blue color on the sides. It's got some light brown on its legs as well as along the top of its body. It's got some marble eyes that are green. And I don't have the piece anymore, unfortunately, but originally it was able to swallow, I think, a cage that had a man inside. So this thing could actually swallow humans or dinosaurs or whatever you want, and you can release it from the stomach right in there. Next up of my rarest figures is this Jurassic Park Lost World Pteranodon that was nicknamed the Steel Beak. This figure's pretty old and fragile now, but it's one of the few figures that has a fabric wing on it, as well as spring-loaded joints for the wings, so it can swing forward and it swings back, just like that. Next up is the Jurassic Park Lost World Parasaurolophus. This figure's in pretty good condition for how old it is. It's got the light tan body with the darker brown stripes along the top, and this figure actually has an action button on its back used for running. Here we've got the original Jurassic Park Triceratops, and this figure has some huge battle damage on its side. You can see some flesh and some bone in it as well. This figure also has the soft rubbery body like many of the super old figures, and it has an action that when you squeeze its stomach, it swings its head upward. Here is a dinosaur figure that, although it's more recent, it's still pretty hard to find and pretty rare. This is an extreme chomping Spinosaurus from Jurassic World. This figure has the dark ground body with the light underbelly and the red spine and face. And of course, it comes with the button at the top of its head for the chomping. Right here is another one of the original Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus Rexes. This is a smaller figure. It probably only stands about 9 or 10 inches tall. It's got some battle damage on the side, and it has the soft rubbery body all throughout aside from its arms and its legs. This super bright dinosaur, I believe, is from Jurassic Park The Lost World and is actually a Chaos Effect Ankylorannodon. This figure has some super bright colors with bright green and the bright purple, plus it's got a super bright orange eye as well. And there's actually a hidden action button on its back used to move its tail. Over here is another more recent figure from Jurassic World, but is still pretty rare and pretty hard to find. This is the hybrid Indominus Rex. It's got the bright red over its body, it's got some gold, and the classic gray color for the Indominus Rex. Plus it has a few action buttons, the first that you press down to stick out its spines, and the second to pull down the arm, and it roars. Check this one out. Here is another discontinued Jurassic World figure. This figure is fairly rare and is actually a hybrid Tyrannosaurus Rex. Check out these spines that pop out on the top of its head and on its back. Plus, another unique feature about this Tyrannosaurus Rex is this unique coloring right along the side of its body. And the action button that springs out the spines also activates the jaw. This is another Chaos Effect dinosaur from Jurassic Park. This is the Velociraptorix, and this dinosaur has some really unique features. What stands out the most to me are these wings right on the Velociraptor's arms. That's super interesting. And it's got these spikes right along the top of its back and its head as well. And this Velociraptorix has an action that when you pull the leg, it swings its arms up and down and its head moves as well. Next up we've got another figure from Jurassic World. This is a hybrid special edition Ankylosaurus. And the most special part about this figure is that it actually has part of its shell that you can take off to reveal the normal shell underneath. This removable shell is super bright and reflective. It's got some bright green and purple in the spikes as well. And you can just plop it right back on. Next up in my rare figures, we've got the Jurassic Park Amargo Spinus. I think this figure looks somewhat similar to the unopened figure that we saw at the very beginning of this video. It's got the long neck, it's got the spines all over, and it's got a few action buttons actually that when you move the leg, it actually sticks up its spines on its back, on its neck, and it opens its jaws too. Next up is the Jurassic Park Lost World Chasmosaurus. This figure looks similar to a Triceratops. It's got many of the same features. It's got the horns in the front. And this figure also has an action that when you pull its leg, it moves its head up and down. This is another Jurassic World hybrid figure. This, I believe, is a hybrid between a Stegosaurus and a Triceratops. But it's also got some super bright and unique coloring with the bright blue on its side, the dark blue on its legs, and the gold right along the top and its horns too. Here is another Jurassic World hybrid figure. This is a hybrid between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Dilophosaurus. And once again, it's also got some super bright coloring with the bright orange on its sides. It's got some gold along the top too. This is a Jurassic Park Spinosaurus. And let me tell you, I think it looks a lot different than the Spinosauruses that Jurassic World is releasing now. But it's still got the huge spine along its back, of course, and it has some pretty bright coloring. It's got the bright green along its body with the gray as well. Next up is a fairly large figure from Jurassic Park. This is a Utah Raptor. It's got the orange body with the black detailing along the top and the lighter underbelly. And a nice detail on this figure is that you can actually move the claw up and down on its feet. Over here, we've got a few Jurassic Park Baryonyx figures. These are quite a bit different than the new Jurassic World Baryonyxes that are being released now. Their bodies are a lot more thin, they've got shorter legs, and it looks like they've got longer necks too. Next up, we've got two Velociraptors from Jurassic Park with different features. This first one is a lot smaller, and you can move the arms and the legs, but there's no action button. But on this second Velociraptor figure, there's an action button that when you move the leg, you can hear a sound effect. It's really quiet, so you probably can't hear it on the camera. But its head also used to move up and down as well. Here are some other interesting dinosaurs from Jurassic World. This is a Dilophosaurus with battle damage on the side, and it is super brightly colored. We've also got a smaller Spinosaurus with battle damage on the side that you can control by moving the tail around too. And for the last two dinosaurs of my rare collection, first we've got a Jurassic Park baby T-Rex with a broken leg feature. And we've also got this, I think it might be a Baryonyx, it might be an Allosaurus, it's kind of hard to tell, but it's from Jurassic World, and it's got the battle damage on the side, and the tail controls the head too. These are all my rarest Jurassic World figures, and today we're checking them out. First up, we've got this huge Indominus Rex hybrid figure. While most Indominus Rex figures are painted just gray, this one has some crazy red, some gold on the underbelly and arms and legs, and it has a few unique action buttons too. The first is a chomping action, and second is a button that reveals even more spikes on its back. Next up, we've got another Indominus Rex figure. This one is normal colored, but it's pretty old. It's got a rubberized head and neck, and the rest of its body is a hard plastic. And when you pull down on the arms, it opens and closes its mouth. This next rare figure is a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It also has some rubberized parts of its body as well, like the tail and the neck. This figure also has some stomp sound effects. And of course, it's got a roar sound effect and a chomp action. In the back here, we've got another T-Rex figure. This one looks quite a bit different. It's got some green and some very unique and kind of strange looking details on its body. It's a bit smaller than the T-Rex that we just saw, but it has one real cool special effect. Press the button here, and it springs up some spikes on its back and on the top of its head too. This next T-Rex right here is actually identical to the other one, except that it does not have these spikes coming out of its back. And I believe this one was actually custom colored too, so you won't find this one anywhere else. This is a super brightly colored dinosaur. This is a classic Dilophosaurus. It's got bright neon coloring all over its body. It's got a button on its side for lighting up and sound effects, although it doesn't work anymore. And you can use the tail to move the head up and down too. Here's a super brightly colored Velociraptor figure. It's got the green with the red stripes all over its body. This one also has a button for sound effects and lighting up, although it doesn't work anymore. And not only that, but it also has a tail that you can press down on to open and close its mouth. Here's a pretty unique looking dinosaur. This is an Amargosaurus. It stands on all four legs and it has two action buttons. One moves its head up and down, and the other swings its tail. Check out those two huge spines running down its back and its neck. Next up, we've got an Edmontosaurus figure. This one's a bit more recent, but it can be pretty hard to find. The brightest coloring is on the top of its head. It's got some blue and some yellow, and you can hear the sound effects, and there's a tail that moves its head around too. Check it out, we've got another Indominus Rex figure. This one's quite a bit smaller than the ones that we saw earlier, although it's got some really cool battle damage that you can slide open and closed. Plus, on this figure, you can move the tail up and down, and it has a chomping action. Here's another super brightly colored dinosaur. This is a hybrid Stegosaurus and Triceratops. Check out all that super cool gold coloring all over its body, and it's even got some battle damage right on the side. And this figure has one action. When you press down on the tail, it pushes its head forward. Here is a winged dinosaur. I'm not sure what type it is. It's definitely not a pteranodon or anything like that. It's got a bright blue underbelly. It's got the red on the top. It's got an action button right on its back. And you can flap the wings by moving the back feet. Up next is a miniature Mosasaurus figure. This small figure has some battle damage that you can open and close right on the side. And although it doesn't work anymore, you used to be able to lift the tail up to open and close the mouth. Here is the Concavinator figure. This dinosaur has some bright coloring along its back right next to the spike and some purple all over its face. Plus it has two action buttons, one to activate the jaw and the other to activate the tail. Right here is a special edition Ankylosaurus figure. This figure is pretty special because you can actually remove part of the shell on top of its body as well as on its tail, and underneath you can see that there's still a super hard shell for this dinosaur. And with this figure, when you move this leg back and forth, it swings its tail and it moves its head back and forth. Right here we've got a classic looking Ceratosaurus figure with a button for battle damage on the side. This figure is a bit smaller than many of my other Ceratosaurus figures, but you can still use the tail to open and close the mouth. Up next, we've got a reflective Parasaurolophus figure. Check out that super shiny pink coloring along its back and some on its leg as well. And this figure has an action where you can move the tail to move the head around. Plus, it has sound effects too. I've got another Velociraptor figure here. This one isn't as bright as the last one we saw, but it's still got the battle damage button right on the side that used to light up and have sound effects. Plus on this figure, you can move the tail up and down to move the arms. I've got one more Dilophosaurus figure in this super rare collection. This one is identical to the one we saw earlier, except that it does not have the super bright neon coloring. It's got the huge frills in the front, there's the battle damage button on the side, and you can use the tail to dip the head up and down too. This next dinosaur, I believe, is called a Pachycephalosaurus. It's yellow with black striping along the top. It's got a tiny bit of battle damage on the side, and it's got an action that when you press down on the tail, it does a headbutting action for its super hard shell on its head. Next up, we've got a super small Spinosaurus figure with super bright coloring. It's blue on the side, it's like a reflective gold on the underbelly, and bright red along the spine. It's also got the battle damage on the side, and you can use this figure's tail to move its head around. Next up is a small Allosaurus figure, once again, really brightly colored. It's got tan, yellow, and red on its body. It's got a little bit of battle damage on its side, just like the other figures, and the tail that controls the mouth and the head. And finally, we've got 3 Tyrannosaurus Rex figures. This middle one is for sure the rarest one. It is a super bright orange color. It's got some gold coloring along the top. And this T-Rex is actually a hybrid with a Dilophosaurus. You can tell because of those huge frills on the front right there. And these other 2 are a little bit more normal looking. They both got the battle damage right on the side. This first one is a light green color, and this one is a light brown color. And they both have the tail that controls the mouth when you move it around. Today on Amazing Dinosaurs, we are checking out Jurassic World Dino Trackers and Roar Attack Collection. I've got some new ones over here as well. Let's get started with the Dino Trackers because those are the newest figures. This first one is the Diabloceratops. It's got some crazy horns in the front and some unique dark red coloring. Plus it has an action button on its back to move its head back and forth. This is from the Gigantic Tracker series. This is the Stegosaurus. It's got some pretty bright coloring all over its body. You can see there's all sorts of little specks of different color in there as well. And it comes with this awesome Dino Tracker backpack. And it has 2 action buttons. One swings the tail up and down, and the other swings the tail back and forth. Next up is another gigantic tracker. This is the Sinotyrannus. It's got a dark green body with some red detailing on its tail, on its neck, and on its head. It comes with these interesting binocular light type of things. And it has 2 action buttons on its back. One moves its head, and the other moves its tail. Next up is the Track and Attack Endoraptor. This is one of the newest Endoraptors released. If you pull on its arms, it moves its head. And it has a button on its back to open its mouth. Check out that awesome reflective blue coloring too. Here we've got the Dryptosaurus from the Dino Trackers series. This figure is mostly darker in colors, but it does have tons of spikes along its body. And it has a dual action button on its back that you can use to move its head back and forth. This is the Kronosaurus from the Dino Trackers series. It is an aquatic dinosaur, so it's got 4 fins. And this figure also has the dual action button on its back to move its head back and forth. And next up for the Dino Trackers, we have the Austroraptor figure. So this figure is in the same family as a Velociraptor, but you can see it has a much longer and narrower snout. And on this figure, you can adjust the tail, the legs, the arms, the neck, and the mouth. All right, let's check out this new Dino Trackers set that I'm adding to my collection. This is the Search and Smash Truck set. Let's first check out this Atrociraptor. It's about the same size as some of the other mini Atrociraptor figures that I have. It's got some pretty unique coloring though. It's got some bright red-orange coloring along the front, while the rest of its body is a soft tan color with a little bit of black on the top. And this set actually comes with a tracker that you can put right on to the Atrociraptor. Check that out, it's pretty cool. This set also comes with a soldier who's got a brown vest and also a weapon. And the biggest part of all is this Jeep. And it has a special feature where you can press down on the hood and it'll actually capsize. And next up from the Dino Trackers is the Elaphrosaurus. This figure's got some soft blue coloring with some green detailing, and it's got a real mean looking face. All right, moving on to the Roar Attack series, we've got the Baryonyx Chaos figure. This figure has some bright blue detailing along the top of its head and a slide lever action for the sound effects and chomping action. Here is our first Allosaurus figure. This figure has the brown body with the blue detailing along the top. It's It's got some little spikes running down its spine, and it's got the slide lever action on its back for the roaring and sound effects. Next up from Roar Attack is this Ceratosaurus figure. It's a bit smaller than the Allosaurus figure. It's got the red and black coloring along the top, and of course the slide lever action for the chomping and the roar sound effects. This next figure is actually a Mega Destroyer figure. This is the Carcharodontosaurus. It's got an action button right on its back for the chomping. And you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail too. Here's another Mega Destroyer Carcharodontosaurus. It's pretty much the same aside from this awesome coloring. It's got the blue and the orange and brown, and of course the action button on its back for chomping. Here is the next Roar Attack Allosaurus. This one has the dark green, white, and red. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, and it has the slide lever button on its back to activate the sound effects. Here is another Mega Destroyer. This is the Pentaceratops, and this figure is quite large. It's got the soft brown body with the gray detailing and two action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second swivels its entire torso back and forth. And these are probably some of the largest horns that I've seen. This is the Roar Attack Kentrosaurus. It's got spikes all over its body, but the coolest part are these huge spikes coming right out of the side. And you can actually swing those spikes back and forth using this slide lever action. This is the Mega Destroyer Stegosaurus figure with the camouflage green, tan, and brown coloring. And it's got the hidden action button that you can press to swing its entire torso and its tail back and forth. And those are some pretty long spikes too. This is the Ceratosaurus figure with the dark green and black coloring. It's got the tiny little horn on its head, and there's a slide lever action for the chomping and sound effects. This one's an interesting looking dinosaur. This is the Ouranosaurus from Roar Attack. It's got a huge spine running along its back and a slide lever action on its side to move the head up and down. This next figure is Ankylosaurus Bumpy. It's got the huge shell on its back, the spikes coming off the side, and a slide lever action to swing its tail back and forth. And last of all, we've got Baryonyx Limbo in the green, dark green, and brown coloring. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, and you can use the slide lever action to open and close its mouth. Today, we're checking out all of my Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom predators. I've got raptors, I've got Indoraptors, I got T-Rexes, and I've even got one that I just bought on eBay. Let's check this one out first. This is the Grab and Growl Endoraptor. This is actually the first of this toy that I have in my collection. Let's check out the features. First of all, it is very movable and posable. You can see that you can move its shoulders, its elbows, its legs, all over. But the coolest part of this figure is the functions on the tail. You can see that it has a button on its tail right there that it actually used for slashing. And it comes with sound effects too. Plus, it also has a second button on the bottom of its tail used for the jaw. And finally, this Indoraptor has the tail that controls the front torso, like many T-Rex figures. So you can actually move it around and make it look super lifelike, as well as slash and chomp too. Hiding way in the back here, we've got a super colossal T-Rex. This is the orange and tan one. It's got the light underbelly. Let's check out those yellow eyes. It has a huge jaw that you can open up really wide. And of course, it has the stomach compartment, so you can feed it miniature dinosaurs too. Next up, we've got another big T-Rex. This is the Thrash and Throw T-Rex. It has a button on its foot for stomping sound effects. And the coolest part of this dinosaur is you use the tail to control the torso. You can get chomping, just like that, and you can also get a roaring pose too. Right over here, we've got a dark blue Suchomimus with yellow detailing right along the top. And it's got that huge spine all the way from the tail up to the top of the head. That is really cool. This dinosaur has a lot of teeth in its mouth and a very narrow jaw. And it has one action button on its back to control the chomping. Right over here, we've got a classic T-Rex figure. This one is also a light orange and brown. And while the tail does not control the torso or the head, there is a button on the top of its head to control the jaw. Next up, we've got another Endoraptor figure. This is the classic Endoraptor figure. You can see it's still very flexible and adjustable with its limbs and its arms. This figure does not have the buttons on its tail to control the arms and the jaw, but it is still a super posable figure and pretty well detailed. This giant figure is a Mosasaurus. I'm sure you recognize this even from the first Jurassic World movie. This figure is probably 2 feet long from head to tail, and it's got some pretty good texture on its body as well. You can see it's got the large bumps on the top of its back, and it's got the smaller bumps right along the side. This is the extreme battle damage Tyrannosaurus Rex. This T-Rex has battle damage all over its body. It's got some on its chin, on its neck, on its leg, even on its chest and tail too. It of course has that iconic orange and brown coloring all over its body. And just like the T-Rex that we saw earlier, it has a button on the top of its head to activate the jaw. This is the bright yellow and red Ceratosaurus. Check out that huge iconic horn on the top of its head. It's also got movable limbs and a tail, and there's an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Here I've got the yellow and gray Allosaurus. It has some pretty cool detailing right along the top, all the way from its tail to the top of its head. It also has some red right above its eyes, which is pretty cool, and it's got an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Next up, we've got a huge Carnotaurus figure. This figure has tiny arms in the front. It has adjustable legs and a tail. It has the classic clay red body on the side and a dark purple gray color right along the top. And of course, there's an action button on its back for snapping the jaw. This is a supersized Pteranodon figure. This dinosaur figure is probably 1 foot from wingtip to wingtip. It's got the dark blue body with the maroon and tan wings. There is a button on its back for flapping the wings. And you can open and close the jaw too. Here is the bright red Metriacanthosaurus. Most of its body is that bright red color. It's got some dark gray detailing right along the top of its back and some yellow detailing on the top of its head and its nose too. The limbs are pretty adjustable on this figure, and of course, the button on the back to activate the jaw. This is the Baryonyx figure. It's got the light brown body with the dark gray-blue detailing all along its back to its tail and to its neck, and it's got the reflective bright blue coloring on the top of its head too. I've actually got another Metriacanthosaurus in here. This one is like a mustard or like a dark green yellow color. Most of this dino figure's body is a dark green yellowish color. It's got the dark green detailing along the top of its body all the way to the top of the head, and it's got the action button on its back for the jaw. I've got another Baryonyx figure, but with slightly different coloring. It's still got the light brown body with the dark gray-blue detailing on the top, but this figure has the bright orange coloring right on the top of its head and its nose too. I've got quite a few Velociraptor figures in here as well. Let's see what we got. First, we've got the classic Velociraptor blue figure with the iconic blue stripe all the way down the side of the body. I also have the green Velociraptor that is in the crawling or sneaking pose. You can also open and close this jaw too. I've got this super bright Velociraptor with the bright yellow and the brown on the top. And this Velociraptor is actually one of the leaping Velociraptors. So the legs are spring-loaded and you can send it flying into the air. And this Velociraptor has a bit more subtle coloring. It's got a gray body with the dark gray-blue detailing along the top and some cool orange eyes too. I've also got a few winged Dimorphodon figures. This first one is gray in color with some dark maroon or purplish color along the bottom of its wings. I've also got this green Dimorphodon with the bright orange and yellow along the bottom of its wings. And on both of these figures, you can open and close the jaws. Next up, I've got a few Dilophosaurus figures, all with different coloring. This first one is a soft green color with the yellow and red frills. This one is a gray-brown color with some blue detailing along the back, and its frills are white and a green-blue color too. And this Dilophosaurus, the brightest of the three, is a purple and red Dilophosaurus, and it's got some yellow, orange, and red along the frills in the front too. This is a Herrerasaurus. It is a light gray color with some brighter detailing. You can actually adjust the neck on this figure as well as the jaw, and of course all the other limbs as well. Here is another Herrerasaurus figure, but this one has a soft green coloring with the brown detailing on top. All the same body parts can move, and this one actually has some battle damage on the side that you can open and close. I've still got tons of Velociraptor figures in here. This first one is another Velociraptor blue, but this one has the battle damage on the side. Here is another spring-loaded Velociraptor. The legs are spring-loaded so that they can leap up into the air, and it's got a bright blue-green color all over its body. And I've also got the leaping Velociraptor blue as well. It's got the iconic coloring along the side of its body, and of course, the spring-loaded legs for leaping into the air. Got just a few more figures in here. This one is the Protoceratops. It's got the dark brown body with darker detailing along the top and a red ridge right along its nose. And like many of these miniature figures, the limbs are fairly adjustable as well. And I've got two more Velociraptor figures in here. This first one is a dark red with purple detailing along the side, kind of the same design as Velociraptor blue. And I've got another leaping Velociraptor. This one is a dark tan color with the brown detailing along the top, and of course, the spring-loaded legs. And last but not least, I've got another giant Pteranodon figure with foldable wings and the same blue body with the red and tan wings. Welcome to the Amazing Dinosaurs channel. Today we are checking out a bunch of dinosaur figures that were released as part of the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom toy line. I've got tons of these dinosaurs, so let's dig in. First up, we've got some new ones that I just bought that we're gonna check out first. The first one is the Indoraptor. So this Indoraptor figure is probably medium sized, not as big as most of the T-Rex figures. It's got the all black body with the gold striping right along the side, just like the movies. And this figure is super posable. You can move basically every joint in its body as you could in real life. You can open the jaw, the neck, the arms, the legs, the tail. It's got two joints. It's got some quills on its back and on the top of its head too. And of course, it's got those red eyes. Next up, we've got the Dino DNA Lab Kit with the Dimorphodon. Let's open it up and check it out. All right, here we go. So here is the Dimorphodon. It's gray in color, and it's got that maroon purplish coloring on the bottom of its wings, and it's pretty adjustable. And we've got the Dino DNA kit. Comes with the slime too. Let's go ahead and put this in. All right, here's the slime, and it goes into the canister. Oops, didn't quite fit. And then you stick this dinosaur skull into the slime. And there you go. It is now on display. Plus, you can actually open up the canister to let the goo slide out of the side. That's pretty cool. And next up, we've got another Dino DNA lab kit. This is the Velociraptor pack, so let's open it up and check it out. Here is the Velociraptor. It looks like it is in a sneaking pose, crawling along the ground. It's got a light green color, and it's pretty poseable with all its limbs and jaw. And of course, you've got the DNA kit right here. Let's put that slime in. And finally, let's put the skull in. Looks like this kit comes with the same skull. And there we go. Exact same as the other one. It's got the opening on the side to let out the goo. And you can close it back up and put it on display. Next up, we've got the Legacy Collection Extreme Chomping Spinosaurus. This has the dark green body and the iconic red along the spine and the face too. And of course, it's got that chomping action. This is the Thrash and Throw T-Rex. This dinosaur can be controlled by moving its tail all around to control its neck, its head, and its jaw. Right over here, we've got the giant Mosasaurus figure. They've actually come out with a new one since then that has different coloring, but this is the original one for Fallen Kingdom. This one has a lighter blue coloring on the side and the top compared to the newer one, and the white underbelly. And on this figure, the tail actually doesn't move. That's only with the newer Mosasaurus figures. Here we've got the basic figure of the Indoraptor. It has the same awesome coloring as the one we opened up earlier, but the limbs cannot move around as much. As you can see, you can only move them somewhat. You can't move the elbows, you can't move the knees. It's kind of stuck in this crawling, sneaking pose. This is the Action Attack Suchomimus. It's got a bright blue color on the bottom and the sides, and the yellow detailing on the top. And it's got one action button on its back for chomping. Next up is the Rorivore Allosaurus. It's got the gray body with yellow detailing on top, and you can move the arms and the legs, and there's an action button on its back for chomping the jaw. This is the Rorivore Ceratosaurus. It has a light yellow body with the black and red detailing on the top, and the iconic horn right there on its nose. Plus, it's got an action button on its back to chomp the jaw. Right here, we've got a basic figure of the Dilophosaurus. It's got the soft green body with the red frills. And you can open and close the frills and move the limbs a little bit, but they're not very adjustable. This is another basic figure from Jurassic World. This is a Velociraptor with the orange body and the brown top. And just like the Dilophosaurus, the limbs are slightly adjustable, but it's pretty basic. Way down here, we've got an Extreme Chompin' T-Rex. This is part of the Legacy Collection, I believe, and it has the orange body with the light underbelly. It's got the button on the top of its head for chomping. Here's one that I actually haven't shown that much. This is the Tyrannosaurus Rex Anatomy Kit. As you can see, you can take it all apart and check out its insides. See, it's got, I think that might be the stomach, that's the intestines. You can see the muscle of the tail, you can see the bone behind it, and even on its leg that you can take off, you can take this apart and see what's inside. So there you've got the bone, got more muscle. It's pretty cool. This is the Action Attack Carnotaurus. It's got the dark red body, lighter underbelly, and it's almost like a purple color along the top with all those bumps along its spine. And this dinosaur has a jaw snapping action. It's really fast. This dinosaur is the Action Attack Stegosaurus. It has a light blue body with a darker blue along the top, and this figure has a tail swinging action. Next up, we've got the Rorivore Sinoceratops. This dinosaur has some pretty cool patterning along its whole body. I really like that orange right on the top. And this figure has a head shaking action for roaring. This is a pretty big winged dinosaur. This is the Roarivore Pteranodon. This figure has a dark blue body with the red and white wings, and it's got a button on its back for the wing flapping. This is the Legacy Collection Velociraptor with the jumping action. The legs are spring-loaded, so when you press down on its body, it'll actually spring up into the air. And this is a super bright Velociraptor. I love the bright orange on this figure. Next up is the Battle Damage Triceratops. This is a smaller figure. It's green all over its body. It's got a little bit of light brown on the top. And most importantly, it's got the battle damage on the side that you can flip open and closed. Looks like we got a few more Pteranodons in here. First one is a light gray color. It's got some dark blue detailing on the wings and on the face, and it's got a button on its back to flap its wings. And this second Pteranodon is a dark green color with yellow accenting. And just like the other, it has a button on its back for flapping the wings. Here is another basic figure. This is Velociraptor Blue. This figure is about medium sized and it's fairly adjustable, but since it's a basic figure, you only can do so much with the arms and the legs. Over here, we've got the Roarivore Baryonyx. This has a light brown body with a dark blue-gray coloring on top, and the coolest part is this reflective blue right along the top of its head. Plus, this figure has an action button on its back for chomping and roaring. Here is another Baryonyx figure, but this one I believe was actually part of a Lava Surge playset. This one has the bright orange coloring on the top of its nose, while the rest of its body is light brown and dark blue-gray, just like the other one. And of course, it's got the action button on its back for chomping and roaring. Here is the Roarivore Metriacanthosaurus. This has a green-yellow coloring along the side and bottom, with a darker green along the top, and it's got a button on its back for chomping. Right over here is the Roarivore Triceratops. This has a clay red color with the brown detailing along the top, and it's got a button on its back for the roaring. This figure is the Roarivore Ankylosaurus. It has the dark brown underbelly. It's got some green detailing along its shell, and the gray and the white spikes too. And this figure has the button for swinging its tail back and forth. Let's see how many battle damage figures we have in here. I think I found 4. I think that's about it. Let's check them out. This first one is a Pachycephalosaurus, the green body and the orange top, and of course the battle damage right there on the side. Next up, we've got a yellow Velociraptor with brown detailing along the top and the battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. As well as another Velociraptor, looks like Velociraptor Blue with the battle damage on the side. And finally, a green Herrerasaurus with the battle damage on the side and a little bit of orange-brown detailing along the top. We've got tons of Velociraptors in here. Let's check these out. This first one is a blue and gold Velociraptor, and on its head is actually pretty reflective, which is awesome. Then up next, we've got the classic Velociraptor Blue figure, and of course you can open and close its jaw and move many of its limbs around. Then we've got this red Velociraptor and this green Velociraptor. Both have movable limbs, and you can open and close both of their jaws too. Here we've got a few Dilophosauruses. This first one is light green with the yellow and red frills in the front. It's got some brown coloring on its back. And this second Dilophosaurus is a dark brown color with blue detailing on the back, and its frills are white and like a dark green color. Next up, we've got the green Minmi figure. This figure has spikes all over the top of its shell for protective covering. And it looks like we've got a couple more Dimorphodons in here too. This one has the gray and maroon coloring, just like the one we saw earlier at the beginning of the video. And this figure is dark green and has orange and red coloring along its wings. That's pretty cool. I definitely like this coloring better. This, I believe, is a Protoceratops. It's got the light blue coloring with the yellow detailing along the top. Here is another jumpin' Velociraptor figure. This one is a bright blue coloring, and just like the other Velociraptor figure, you can press down on its body to bend the legs, and then you let go to let it spring up into the air. Next up is the Stygimoloch Stiggy. This figure has the super hard head with the spikes right behind it, and you can move its arms and its legs and its tail too. We've also got a few Gallimimuses in here. This first one is a blue-gray color with darker coloring along the top, and it has adjustable legs, arms, and a neck. This second figure is a bit different. Its coloring is a bit more detailed all over its body, plus it's got an action button on its back to run its legs. And the final one is a light tan Gallimimus with darker brown detailing along the top, and just like the others, you can move the legs, the arms, and the neck. This is the Legacy Collection Pachycephalosaurus, and this figure has the head ramming action. And last but not least is the Proceratosaurus. It's a smaller figure with a dark brown coloring, with a lighter underbelly, and it's got that red detailing right along its nose, and you can open and close its jaw and move its arms and legs. Today on Amazing Dinosaurs, I am showing you my quadrupedal dinosaur collection, which means dinosaurs with 4 feet, and I'm going to be ranking them from the biggest all the way to the smallest. Let's get started with the largest quadrupedal that I have, which is this huge Dreadnoughtus figure. This dinosaur has the blue with the tan striping, and it has one of the longest necks out of any of my figures. So let's set this figure on the very left because this is my largest dinosaur. Next up in size is one of these Brachiosaurus figures. Let's first choose this one right here. It's got the classic brown coloring, and you can move its legs, its neck, and you can even open and close its mouth. Let's move this Brachiosaurus right next to the Dreadnoughtus. Check out that size difference between these two. Next up, we've got another Brachiosaurus figure, but this one is newer. This one is part of the Jurassic World Dominion collection. Now, its body shape is pretty much the same as this one right here, but you'll notice that it has some different coloring, and the best part of all is that it has this reflective blue coloring along its face. Next up in size, we've got this huge Apatosaurus figure. This dinosaur is quite a bit smaller than the Brachiosaurus figures, but it's still quite large. It has the green with the light green striping, and I'm sure you recognize this dinosaur from the Jurassic World Dominion movie. Let's keep going. I think the next biggest in size is this Amargosaurus figure. I think this figure's pretty old and that they don't make it anymore, but it's really cool because it has these 2 huge spines running down its neck and 2 action buttons, one to move the neck up and down and one to swing the tail back and forth. All right, let's set this down right next to the Apatosaurus. Wow, look at that size difference. Next up in size, let's go with the Jurassic World Dominion Ankylosaurus figure. This figure features the clay red and brown coloring. It's got tons of spikes all over its body, and it has the tail that controls the head and the chomping action too. Let's set the Ankylosaurus down next in line. Oh, those are pretty close in size. Next up, let's go with the Pentaceratops figure. This dinosaur has one of the largest frills that I've seen out of any dinosaur. Plus, it's got horns all along its frill and on its face too. And it has 2 action buttons, one to move the head up and down, and one to move the torso side to side. All right, let's set this down next to the Ankylosaurus. Next up in size, I think we gotta go with the Stegosaurus figures here. This first one has brown, it's got green, it's got the clay red coloring, and like all the other Stegosaurus figures, it has a tail swinging attack button. Let's set down this first Stegosaurus next to the Pentaceratops. And I think all these Stegosauruses are gonna be pretty similar in size, so let's just go with this one next. It's got the blue-gray coloring with the darker coloring along the top and the pink underbelly, and of course the swinging tail attack. Let's get this Stegosaurus down next in line. This next one is brighter in color. It's almost a teal green color. It's still got a lighter underbelly, and it has some cool highlights right along its spine. This one will be our 3rd Stegosaurus in line. And our 4th and final Stegosaurus of this collection is this gigantic Trackers Stegosaurus. And this is actually a very new figure. It's got some really cool coloring all over its body. Plus, it comes with this crazy looking Dino Tracker backpack. Let's set it down as our fourth Stegosaurus. Next in size, I think, is this Diabloceratops figure. Check out these super huge horns on the top of its head and on the front of its face too. It's got a fiery red color over most of its body and a light tan underbelly, plus there's an action button to swing its head back and forth. Let's put this down next in size. Up next, let's go with this Spinosaurus in the light gray blue with the tan detailing. And check out those super dark black eyes. That's pretty crazy looking. Let's put this one down next in line, and you can use the tail to move the head too. I've got another Spinosaurus figure right here that is probably the exact same in size, but it's got different coloring. This one is the green with the tan detailing, and this one has some bright yellow eyes. So let's set this one down too, and look at that. This one also controls the head by moving the tail. It looks like we've got a few Triceratops figures up next. This first one has the dark brown with the two tones of blue along its back, and just like these Spinosaurus figures, you can use the tail to control the head. Let's go ahead and grab this next Triceratops figure with the gray and darker gray detailing along the top. But with this figure, instead of the tail that controls the head, there are two action buttons on its back. One controls the head for roaring, and the other controls its tail for swinging back and forth. Now let's set this down next in line as the second Triceratops. And this next Triceratops has some green coloring with brown along its frill and along its back too. And this Triceratops has an even different action. When you press down on its body, it does a roar and it has sound effects too. Oh, you know what? I think there's another Triceratops here that I didn't even notice. This one has the clay red coloring with the brown detailing along the top and on the frill. And this one has one single action button on its back for the roaring action. This next quadrupedal dinosaur is a Kentrosaurus. It's got the spines running all along its back and these ginormous spikes coming right out of its sides. And this one has a pretty cool action that when you slide this back, it swings its torso back and forth to stab with those huge spikes. Now this dinosaur might be a little taller with its spines compared to the Triceratops, but we're gonna place it right here anyways. For the next up in size, we're gonna go with this dinosaur. This is the Edmontosaurus. Its front legs are smaller compared to its back legs. It's got some pretty cool coloring on its face and on that crown on the top of its head. And like many of these other cool figures that we've seen, you can use the tail to control the head. And it has sound effects too. Next, we're gonna go with this Iguanodon figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's mostly tan, it's got some brown striping with the lighter streaks on the top. And with this figure, when you press down on its back, it has a chomping action. All right, next, let's go with this crazy looking dinosaur. This is a Sarcosuchus. It's got a long and narrow snout with tons of teeth. And the coolest part is that you can use the tail to control the head. The next dinosaur that we're gonna choose is this Ankylosaurus figure right here. This one is clay red, it's got some brown, and its spikes are a lighter color. And I think this one was from Jurassic World Dominion because when you press down on its back, it swings its tail back and forth. Let's go ahead and grab this next Ankylosaurus for our next in size. This one is a really old figure from Jurassic World. I think this one is from the first movie. And check out the size difference between the two. Next up, we've got two baby Brachiosaurus figures right here. And they each have their own unique color. This first one's gray, it's got some dark brown purple coloring along the top. And this other one is a much brighter color. It's a bright green with dark green right along the top. So let's set these down right next to the Ankylosauruses. Next in size, let's see, I think it might be this dinosaur, which I believe is called a Styracosaurus. It's got some super bright coloring along the front of its frill, which is really interesting, and it has some darker detailing along its back. Now let's set this down right next to the baby Brachiosauruses. I think next we're gonna go with this Miragaia figure from Jurassic World Dominion. Like the Kentrosaurus, this one also has some huge spikes sticking right out of its sides. Now let's set it down right next to the Styracosaurus. Next, why don't we go with this dinosaur? This is the Chialingosaurus. It looks somewhat similar to a Stegosaurus because it's got those spines in the top, but the spikes in the very back are quite a bit different, and it has these tiny little spikes coming out of its front legs. And let's set this one down next in line. Next, let's go with this crazy looking dinosaur. This is the Shringosaurus, and it's got a huge and very long neck. It's got those two evil looking horns on the top of its head too. Very wild looking. Let's put this next in line. For the next in size, why don't we go with this one? This is a Calavosaurus. It's got a dark blue body with some orange detailing. It's got some light blue stripes along its tail and on its mouth as well. And it looks like we're running out of space at the edge of the table, so we're gonna start a new line right in front. For our next in size, let's go with this baby Triceratops figure with extreme battle damage right on the side. And let's put this one down right next to the Calavosaurus. This next dinosaur, I believe, is called a Zuniceratops. It's got a pretty bright body, and it's got two horns on the front of its head. So let's set this down right next to the baby Triceratops. They look pretty similar. For our next one, why don't we go with this baby Stegosaurus figure? And you may notice that this baby Stegosaurus came as part of a set with this huge Stegosaurus right here. You can see that they're very similar in color. So let's set this down next in size, next to the Zuniceratops. And next we'll go with these two Dimetrodon figures. This first one is the older figure of the two, and this figure has an action that when you move its tail, it chomps its jaw open and closed. So we're gonna put that right there. And this other Dimetrodon figure is from Jurassic World Dominion, so it's pretty new. And it's got a much brighter spine, although it does not have any action buttons. So we're gonna set it down right next to the other one. Next up, it looks like we've got a Sauropelta figure. This is a pretty small figure, but it has some huge spikes on its back in comparison. It's really cool. So let's set this one down next in line. Here we have a small dinosaur. This is a Mosasaurus. It's got blue with some black detailing along the top and the yellow underbelly. And we'll set this down right here. And finally, we have two Minmi figures. This first one right over here is mostly green in color. Its spikes are more of a yellow color, but it has a ton of spikes along its back for protection. And this second Minmi figure right here is red in color, and its spikes are a bright white in contrast. But other than that, it is pretty identical to the other Minmi figure. Welcome to the Amazing Dinosaurs channel. Today we're checking out my huge collection of Jurassic World theropods. Theropods are two-legged dinosaurs that are typically characterized by having hollow bones and having 3 toes or claws on each limb. So let's get started. First up, we've got a ginormous Spinosaurus figure. This is the Camp Cretaceous Spinosaurus with the brown body and red along its spine and face, and it's got the action button on its head for the chomping and roaring. Next up, we've got the Terran T-Rex. This T-Rex has a really cool ability. When you press down on this button, it does a tearing action. Look at that, it's like tearing away some meat. That's really cool. And it comes with a second action button to swing the tail. Next up, we've got a big old Therizinosaurus figure, just like in the Jurassic World Dominion movie. It's got the red stripe down its back all the way to the top of its head, and this figure has some special features as well. There is a button on its tail to activate the jaw and the neck, and you can use the tail to swivel the torso back and forth. Plus, check out those huge claws. Next dinosaur is the Stomp and Escape T-Rex. This figure has a light brown body with gray detailing. It has one button on the top of its back for the roaring and chomping. And the tail, when you twist it, stomps its feet. Some pretty cool sound effects that come with it too. Next up, we've got a big old Carnotaurus figure. This has a light red or orange coloring along most of its body. It's got the gray underbelly and the brown top, and tons of little bumps along its back, as well as the 2 horns on the top of its head. And this figure has an action button for the chomping, and you can use the tail to move the head around too. Here's another T-Rex that I bought just recently. This is the new Extreme Battle Damage T-Rex. Check it out. There's a button on its back that you can use to activate the battle damage on the side. That's pretty cool. And the rest of the figure is fully posable as well. Here is another ginormous T-Rex in the back. This one is camo colored, and I believe it's custom colored. That was done a long time ago. And this figure has a few actions that you can do with the tail. You can move the tail up, and it does a roaring pose. And you can move the tail down, and it does a chomping action. This dinosaur is a Baryonyx. It's got the light green coloring and the light brown and dark brown along the top. And it's got an action button on its back for the chomping. Right over here is an Albertosaurus. This figure is medium sized. It's got the dark green coloring along its body and that red maroon color all the way along the top of its head. And this Albertosaurus actually has the battle damage, both on its leg and the battle damage that you can open and close on its side. And you can even bring the rib cage up and down to reveal the stomach inside. Here is another Baryonyx figure. This one is light gray with blue and light green coloring and a little bit of white along the side. And it has the slide lever action to activate the roaring sound effects and the jaw too. Here's another Baryonyx figure. This one has light green coloring along with some darker green along the top and on its legs, and the darker brown along its neck and the top of its head too. This Baryonyx figure also has the slide lever action that you can use for the sound effects and the chomping. This is the Majingasaurus figure. It's a bit smaller. It's got the dark green coloring with the yellow and bright blue detailing along the sides. It has teeny tiny arms that are adjustable, and you can use the tail to move the neck and head around. Let's see what we got next up. This is a Carcharodontosaurus figure. It has the dark blue coloring with the yellow and brown detailing along the top. The arms, legs, and tail are fully adjustable, and there's a button on its back for the chomping. Here is a Cryolophosaurus figure. This one has some really cool crowning along the top of its head in that bright orange color, while the rest of its body is yellow and brown along the top. With this figure, you can use the tail to control the head as well. Here is another Baryonyx figure. This one has some bright orange coloring right along the top of its head though. And of course, it's got the button on its back to activate the jaw. Next up, we've got a dark red Carnotaurus figure. This dinosaur has the light underbelly and some purple detailing along the top of its body. And it is very textured. You can see those bumps and ridges all over everywhere. And of course, it's got the huge horns at the top of its head, plus an action button to activate the chomping. Next up, we've got a super bright yellow Suchomimus figure. This dinosaur has the brown detailing along the top. It's got that spine all the way from its head, all the way down almost to the end of its tail. And this figure has two action buttons. The first is for the jaw and the chomping, and the second action button activates the tail for swinging around. This dinosaur is a Metriacanthosaurus. It's a bit smaller than the other figures. It's got the dark red coloring with some darker detailing along the top, and the bright yellow-orange coloring right along its head. And of course, it's got an action button on its back to activate the jaw. I've got another Suchomimus figure. This one is a dark blue color with some bright yellow detailing along the top and along that spine that goes all the way to its tail. These Suchomimuses have really long and narrow snouts, still full of teeth though, and there is an action button on its back to activate the chomping. Next up is another Carcharodontosaurus figure. This one is tan in color with the brown and orange detailing along the top, and it's got all these little spikes right along its spine, running all the way down to the tail. That's pretty interesting. And this figure has an action button that activates the jaw once again. That's pretty cool. Here we've got an Allosaurus figure with the light tan coloring along the underbelly and the sides, and the darker blue along the top of its back all the way to the top of its head. This figure also has the slide lever action for a bunch of different sound effects and chomping actions. Over here we've got a big Dilophosaurus figure in the bright red coloring along with the green, brown, and red along its frills, and that super bright yellow crown on the top of its head too. This figure is pretty basic though, so it doesn't have any action buttons, but you can still move the arms, the legs, and the tail, as well as move the frills back and forth. Here is a basic Spinosaurus figure. This one is a lot smaller than the Spinosaurus that we saw at the beginning of this video, and this one has the dark green coloring, but still has the iconic red spine and the red around the eyes as well. And on this figure, you can't open and close the jaw, but you can just move the arms, the legs, and the tail. Next up, we've got a huge Carnotaurus figure. This one has some darker red, basically brown coloring along the side. It has a dark gray underbelly and the black along the top. And this figure has a few actions too. The tail actually controls the head, so you can swing that around and up and down, and there's a button on the tail to activate the jaw too. Here is another Cryolophosaurus figure. This one is a dark blue color. It's got the light underbelly and some white detailing on the sides, and then a bunch of red along its back and on the crown on the top of its head too. And just like the other one that we saw, you can use the tail to control the neck. Here is the Baryonyx from the Hammond collection. This Baryonyx is way more adjustable than a lot of figures that you'll see in here. Check that out. You can move its elbows and its arms, all over on its legs. It's pretty realistic with its movement, and it's got a bit more texturing than a lot of the other Baryonyx figures that I have. Looks like we've got some mini Dilophosaurus figures in here. This first one is a soft purple color, and it's got some yellow, orange, and red on its frills. Looking pretty scary. And I've also got this soft green Dilophosaurus that's also got some orange and some yellow on it. And this one actually has an action that when you move the tail, it springs the frills up. That's really cool. Here is the Irritator figure. Most of this figure is dark brown. It's got a little bit of the light underbelly, and it's got some cool dark blue and light blue detailing all along its spine, all the way to the top of its head. And check out that super long mouth with all those teeth. All right, looks like we got another giant Dilophosaurus figure in here. This one is green and has red frills and the red crown. And just like the other one, you can open and close the frills, as well as move the arms, legs, and the tail too. Next up, I believe that this is the Roarivore Allosaurus. This dinosaur is gray all along its body and has the yellow detailing right along the top of its body, all the way to the tip of its head. Here is another Metriacanthosaurus figure. This one is a dark mustard yellow along most of its body and underbelly, and it's got that dark green detailing along the top of its back all the way to its head. And it has an action button on its back for chomping the jaw. We've got another Albertosaurus figure in here. This one does not have the battle damage on its side though. It's got the bright orange detailing on its side all the way up to its eyes, while the rest of its body is a dark green color. This figure has an action where you can move the tail to control the head, as well as press the button on its tail to activate the jaw too. Check it out, another Baryonyx figure. This one has the bright reflective blue coloring on the top of its head, while the rest of its body is a soft brown color and a dark gray blue detailing along the top. And it's got the action button on its back for the jaw. Looks like we've got a few Monolophosaurus figures in here as well. This first one is a brown color with gray detailing, and it's pretty adjustable. It's a pretty small figure though. This other Monolophosaurus figure actually has some battle damage on the side that you can open and close, and is fairly adjustable as well. And this final one is a dark green color, has some yellow detailing and that bright red detailing, and check out those green eyes too. And this figure actually has an action button. When you move the tail, it chomps its jaw open and closed. Last of all, we've got a Gallimimus figure. This dinosaur is a soft brown color and it has some darker brown striping along the top, and you can move its head up and down as well as its other limbs too. Welcome to the Amazing Dinosaurs channel. Today we are checking out all of my vintage Jurassic Park figures. Some of these figures were even made in 1993, so let's go ahead and get started. The first that we're gonna unbox is one that I actually just bought on eBay. This is a Spinosaurus JP39. This looks a lot different from the new Jurassic World Spinosauruses, for sure. You can see it's got a green and gray body. It's still got the big old spine, but the head shape is different, and it's quite a bit smaller, but it does have some actions too. You can see you can pull down on the arm for the chomping. You can see some wear and tear throughout the body, but I got it for a pretty good price, so. This T-Rex is an original 1993 Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus Rex made by Kenner. It's got an all soft body, it's a soft rubber, it's got a green underbelly and a red side with spots. Its legs though are made of hard plastic, and then it transitions up to the soft rubber right up here. And with this figure, when you squeeze the stomach, it has a roaring function. It used to have sound effects and it doesn't work too well anymore. But it's a pretty old figure, so what can you expect? Next up, we've got the JP53 Chaos Effect Velociraptorix from Jurassic Park. This is a pretty interesting looking dinosaur. They definitely aren't making any figures that look quite like this anymore. See, it's got these spikes all over its body. It's got these wing-like things and a super long tail with those spikes at the end as well. And you can see that it actually is spring-loaded so that when you move the legs, its neck can move up and down, and its arms go up and down too. Next up, we've got a smaller figure. This is the Chasmosaurus JP21. This figure is in decent condition. You can see it's got the tan side, brown underbelly, and the gray top. Plus, it has an action with its leg that when you pull it, it goes into a roaring position. And the sound effects still work, actually. Next up is the Jurassic Park Lost World Tyrannosaurus Rex from 1997. This is the JP28 figure. This once again has the rubber body. It has some pretty cool coloring with yellow, black, and green blue color, and a light underbelly. And you can see that it actually has the throat tunnel all the way down to its stomach, just like the super colossal figures I have now, but a bit smaller. This figure back here, I believe, is another Lost World Tyrannosaurus from 1997. You can see it's colored way differently. I believe this one was custom colored at some point, but it's got the hard front arms that you can swivel, plastic legs, and then the rest of the body is rubber. And this also has the throat tunnel down to its stomach too. Now, obviously, this isn't a dinosaur, but this is still from Jurassic Park. This is the Lost World Humvee capture vehicle. See that it's got these things that come down on the side, as well as these that go up top. I believe these are for humans to sit inside so that they can see way higher when they're riding way high up on the car. Next up is the 1997 Jurassic Park Lost World Thrasher Tyrannosaurus Rex. This T-Rex has hard plastic legs. The entire leg is made of hard plastic on both sides, as are the arms, but the rest of the body is that soft rubber again. And with this figure, when you move the tail around, it actually swings its head back and forth. Way over here on the edge, we've got a super colossal T-Rex. Now, I actually don't know how old this figure is, but it looks quite a bit different than all the other super colossal T-Rexes that I have. Might have been custom painted, but let's check it out. You can see the battle damage on the side. Plus, it comes with some sound effects when you open the mouth. That's pretty awesome. And just like all the rest of my super colossal figures, it is pretty adjustable. You can move the tail, the legs, the arm, and you can open up its mouth really big. Up next, we've got a Jurassic Park puppet. This thing is pretty old, and I believe it is a Velociraptor. It's made entirely out of rubber, so the whole thing is pretty soft. This is the Jurassic Park Lost World Stegosaurus JP24. You can see that I don't have the battle damage cover anymore. I'm not sure where that went. But this figure has a harder plastic body, and the tail is a softer rubber that swings back and forth. Here is the classic Triceratops from Jurassic Park. This is JP08. See, it's got the battle damage on the side, and just like many of the other figures, it's got a soft rubbery body and a function when you squeeze the stomach, the head goes up and down. Next up is the JP06 battle damage Tyrannosaurus figure. This figure, once again, has a soft rubbery body throughout most, except for the feet are hard plastic and the arms. Most of its body is a light tan color with that darker striping on top, and it's got a lighter underbelly. And let's check out that battle damage on the side too. You can see the bones and a little bit of underneath the bones too. Next up is the Jurassic Park 3 sound activated stalking raptor. Now the motor doesn't work in this figure, but originally you turn it on and it would be able to walk forwards slowly and stealthily. This figure is hard plastic all over. It's got the light underbelly, the dark brown sides, and the purple color right along the top. This is the Lost World Pteranodon, JP22. This figure is really old and it's a little worn down, as you can see. It's got the blue and gold body. Its wings are actually a fabric, and there's a button on the top of its body used for flapping its wings. Here's another flying dinosaur. This is JP48. This, I believe, is an Ankyloranodon. It's got some bright green on the underside and purple on the top. Check out those claws. And there's actually a button on its back that you press and it curls its tail inward. And all in all, this is probably over a foot long from wingtip to wingtip. Next up, we've got JP63. This is the Jurassic Park Baryonyx. I've actually got another one, another very similar Baryonyx right here. And both of them have an action with the leg. When you move the leg, it moves its head back and forth. Next up is the JP23 Pachycephalosaurus with a ramming head. Now it's slightly broken because when I press the button, the head will fly off, but that's a pretty cool spring-loaded head ramming action. Here we've got the JP19 Lost World Parasaurolophus. This dinosaur has some pretty cool coloring with the striping down its back and the red right around its head and neck. And this dinosaur also has an action button. You press on its back and it runs. This is the JP18 Jurassic Park Velociraptor. This dinosaur has some pretty unique patterns over its body. It's got the striping, but it's also got these dots and on its arms and neck as well. And it's really quiet because it's an old figure, but it actually does have sound effects. This figure is the Jurassic Park 1994 Utah Raptor. Most of its body is that soft rubber, aside from its legs, which are hard plastic, and its arms. And on this dinosaur, the legs are spring-loaded so that when you press beneath its tail, it'll dip down for a chomp. This is JP58. This is an Amargospinus. This has some pretty cool coloring with the black, tan, and red all over its body, and it has an action with its leg that when you pull it, these spines stand up on its back, on its neck, and it opens its jaw too. This figure is the JP44 Lost World Triceratops. This is a smaller figure. It's got that dark green coloring, and this figure also has an action. When you move the leg, it lifts his head up for a roar. Next up, we've got the JP02 Dilophosaurus. This is a pretty small figure, and you can only move the legs on this one, but this is a classic Jurassic Park figurine. Next up is JP47. This is an Allosaurus, and it actually has battle damage that you can take on and off. Look at those huge pieces that you can take off to see what's underneath. You can take it off the leg as well, see the bone underneath, and you can even remove parts of its tail too. That is super cool. Here we've got JP42. I believe this is a baby T-Rex. It's actually got a broken leg on its right side. It's got that dark coloring on the top and the light brown and tan on the bottom too. I've got some identical JP06 Velociraptor figures. They've got the brown sides, the dark top, and the light underbelly. This is JP12. I believe it is called a Lycinops, and it looks kind of like a saber-toothed tiger. Next up, the JP10 Velociraptor. This has a bright red top and a yellow side and a white underbelly, and when you move its legs, it actually opens up its arms. Plus, I've even got some classic figurines. I've got 2 of the Lost World Ian Malcolm glider action figures. I've got the 1997 Ian Malcolm figure.
Come on!
And I've got the Alan Grant figurine as well. I think I've got a few more human figurines in here. This first one is the Robert Muldoon figurine.
Oh boy!
This second one, I believe, is Harpoon Harrison.
Awesome!
And I believe this one is the Jurassic Park Lost World Nick Van Owen.
Gotcha!
And last but not least, we've got a few teeny tiny figures in here. Can you guess what type of dinosaurs these are? Let me know in the comments below.
Oh boy!
Want to see more dino videos? Click the subscribe button now.